We're coming to you live from Keller Williams Collective in Louisville, Kentucky with a live studio audience. Welcome to the Investor Tribe. So today we're going to walk you through the whole process of fixing up a house and selling it. I'm sure you're going to have questions, and everyone on this panel has worked on flips themselves. They're also providers, also sponsors. So we need to thank our sponsors. We put their information in the folders that you've got, so you can reach out to them. They can be part of your team if you need money, if you need an inspector, if you need a plumber, if you need actually multiple lenders. If there's also a junk hauling gentleman that does cleanouts that couldn't be here today because they had a family emergency, I've used him. Marvin Greenfield with Right Way Hauling is great. I think he just did a job for you too.
They are absolutely amazing. Shout out to Marvin Greenfield at Right Way Hauling. They do a phenomenal job. They help me move my mother. So if you have a mother-in-law and you need help moving, call them because they are super patient and they're super amazing. So
did they move her to Antarctica?
They did not, bruh. Really? Really, bruh? Bruh, like, okay, you know, people are, so a year ago when nobody was watching us, when it was only my mom watching us, we can get away with some of that. But today, we can't get away with talking about mother-in-laws. Too many people watch us now. So we're going to have an absolute blast. So we're going to have the panel introduce themselves. So why don't we start with you, Steve? Go ahead. Grab the mic.
Steve Stahl with SOS Plumbing. We do mainly residential service. We work with a lot of investors, though, with new rehabs, new construction, anything plumbing-wise we work on.
My name is Chad Winchell with XL Inspections. I provide high-quality home inspections as an investor. You can buy a house with just what you see, or you can call me in and I go in and do a real thorough inspection, give you a really detailed list of things that I found that need to be addressed. And then on the tail end, if you had many contractors working on the project, I can come in at the end and make sure things were done with quality and done correctly. So Chad Winchell with XL Inspections.
I'm John Rickert. I'm a home loan lender as of 2 days ago. I've been doing this for 18 years. I've funded just under $500 million in total loan volume, so I've done this for a while. I'm also a real estate investor myself. I started out house hacking. I did not have some rich family member to help me do this. I bought a house in J-Town, house hacked it, and built my own portfolio off of it using other people's money. And now I teach people how to do it, and I help them get the loans for it. So if you need me, I'd love to hear from you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name's Eric Payne. I'm managing partner with Kentucky Private Lending. My partners and I started this business just over 4 years ago. We've funded well over 800 deals at this time. We provide short-term funding for investment properties. So when you've got a killer deal like the ones we'll talk about tonight, and you need money to purchase and or rehab that property, and you need to get it quickly and efficiently and without much hassle, that's where I come in. So excited to be here, humbled to be here with all the people on the panel and some of the who's who in Louisville real estate that I see out there, and hope to bring some value tonight.
All right, so tonight we're going to get started. And so what we're doing tonight is we're summarizing a flip. And so what is a flip? Who wants to take that? Go ahead. Take that. Yeah.
Let me take it. Okay. Yep. A flip, generally speaking, is when you buy a house. It could be off market. It could be the MLS. Usually it's a distressed property. You need to buy it at a discount. You could buy it from a realtor. You could buy it from a wholesaler. You could buy it from a for sale by owner. You could buy it from a family member. You could take it over for the taxes that were owed on through a tax sale. There's different ways to acquire these properties, but if you can buy a property at a good price, then you've got a good margin to put some improvements in it. Sometimes a little improvement, sometimes it's a whole gut job from the studs up remodel, and then you'll improve that property and then sell it for a profit. So it could be a very large profit. You could make mistakes. You could find some of the wrong contractors. You could have to do jobs certain times over and over again. You may have stuff stolen off a job. It's not all roses and rainbows, but the goal will be to make a profit when you flip or sell that property. So we're here to kind of tell you the right ways to do it, some tips, some do's and don'ts, and with the ultimate goal of making a profit, flipping that property, then moving on to the next one. Or you could keep it as a rental, and John's probably gonna talk about that, about burning, pulling your money out of it and moving into the next property. You don't have to flip it and sell it all the time. Sometimes you keep it and hold it and make it a rental.
Yeah. And so we make money off of real estate in several different ways. One of the ways we make money is actually with principal pay down. So every month that you own the property, you are paying down the principal, increasing your equity, right? The next way that you can make money off of real estate is by appreciation. So there is a natural occurring appreciation where every year, the trend line for the U.S. market, housing market, is 4%, anywhere from 3.5% to 4%. For the last 25 years, we have been on that 4% trend line. The other way that we make money is with cash flow, meaning that we can rent the property out to someone who is actually doing the principal pay down for us. So we can make money in that kind of way. The way that we talk about flipping tonight, how to fix and flip your property, is we do what is called force the appreciation. That we buy a distressed asset, we take that asset, we get talent, which is people who live in the service of others. If you listen to our podcast, if you took any of our classes, we talk about how talent lives in the service of others, and those individuals are able to help you make improvements upon that property, and then you sell that property and you make your profit. So we're gonna talk tonight about fixing and flipping. And so let's have a breakdown. Let's kind of talk to one of the two people on this panel that helps us get started. All right. So Eric, why don't you go ahead and talk about how you work with investors in the beginning? Like, just take us from the beginning, and then we'll have John do the same thing.
Absolutely, would be happy to. Yeah, so usually if we're starting from the point where you've got a deal on your hands or a deal that you want to make a move on, I would be on the front end of that process. Reason for that, we're what you'd refer to as a hard money lender or private lender, meaning we're going to be that front end short-term financing that you need. So when you're looking to flip a property, or maybe you're sitting on a pile of cash and you say, hey, I'm just going to float this whole thing, but likely you'd rather use someone else's money, right? So that's where you would come to me. When we're looking at a deal, basically the very high level of what we're looking at is how much are you purchasing that property for? How much do you need to rehab it? And what is the after repair value? What is that property going to be worth when you complete the rehab? So we'll work with you to go over your rehab budget and scope of work, understand what the project involves. We will get a third-party appraisal on the property and provide that appraiser with your rehab budget and scope so that we feel good about that after repair value and what you have in the deal. And basically, without much hassle, we will run a soft credit pool. We'll collect some bank statements. We'll, within 24 hours, give you a term sheet that says, hey, here's the points that you'll pay, the interest that you'll pay on the deal, and get a title search, get an appraisal done, and within as little as 10 days, be able to fund the purchase and rehab of that property for you. Now the kind of structure of that would be, let's say we're able to fund 100% financing for you. So we're gonna lend you the full amount you need to purchase and the amount you need to rehab. If it's a $100,000 purchase price and a $50,000 rehab, when you close on that loan, we'll fund the $100,000 that you need to purchase the property, and then we'll take that $50,000 and we'll hold it back in our escrow so that you can take draws on those funds as you're completing work on the property. And I'm looking over here because I don't know how much time or how in depth you want me to. I can keep going. Okay, cool. So for anybody who's unfamiliar with the structure and kind of how the loans work, that's the way that we would do it. We fund the purchase at closing, and then you take draws on the rehab funds as you're completing work on the property. So then, ultimately, once you've completed that project, the property is done. Then we're discussing flips right now. So you'd be putting that property on the market. And once you sell the property, we get paid off, and you take your profits. Of course, I'm sure something we'll talk about tonight, especially for folks that are looking to get into their first deal. A lot of the conversations that we have with investors that we're funding their first deal is making sure that they're underwriting that deal thoroughly. So not simply saying, in my example, I'm buying it for 100, I'm rehabbing it for 50, I'm going to sell it for 220, so I just made $70,000, right? That's fantastic. Making sure that you understand the carrying costs that are involved, you know, the realtor fees that are going to be on the back end, everything included in that particular deal, so that you have a good idea of what your potential net profit actually is at the end. So, you know, that's really how we work with investors on the front end, helping them with the short-term financing that they need.
So to very literally take over where Eric left off, that's where I jump in. Now, if you guys decide that you don't want to sell it, what do? Right? You need a way to exit the property and keep it, and a lot of investors prefer to hold the property using the BRRRR method. BRRRR is an acronym, and it's buy, rehab, rent, refinance the property, and then repeat the method, right? And you do that because if you do it properly, Eric is going to be looking for you to make about 30% equity whenever you flip the property. That's it. That's what he's going to want to see. If you decide to hold that property, that 30% equity that you've created by flipping it, I can use as your down payment to hold the house and keep it. I offer loans that are specified for investors that are 30-year fixed that will go off the rent roll of the property, right? So if Eric has funded you, we're going to keep the same example going, $150,000 plus his closing cost. You owe him $155 to get out of the deal. It's now worth $220. I'll write you a loan for, say, $160 to include my closing cost and pay him off. That loan is now on a 30-year fixed. If that payment is, say, $1,200 and your rent is $1,201 or more, I can fund that loan. Now, obviously, credit score and equity and all those things matter in what you're going to qualify for and how well you're going to get it. But the general premise is if you have solid credit, I can refinance everything that you owe Eric into one new 30-year fixed note so that you have none of your own money in the project, right? You have used other people's money the whole way through, and you've built yourself an asset that, on the conservative side, will have about 25% equity into it that you created and didn't spend $1 for. The big advantage of this is that you also avoid taxes, right? When you go to sell that property, if you grossed 30%, you're going to pay realtors about 6, you're going to negotiate for about 2, and then you're going to lose about 4 to 5 to taxes. So right off that 30%, you've only got about 17% left over. A lot of investors choose to put that 17% to work by avoiding taxes and using it as their down payment for the refinance, if that makes sense. I mean, that's really the basis of it. There are several types of loans I can do for investors, but that's kind of the 1,000-foot overview, if that makes sense.
So we want to thank you so much. And so we want to shout out. And so we want to shout out the people that couldn't be here tonight. So we got Margaret Weathers, who is a realtor, and she's with Coldwell Banker. She is a excellent real estate agent with well over 20 years of experience, and she would be on a panel tonight. And so one of the elements that we would have started with was we would start with Margaret. Right? Because that agent is the person who is going and looking for properties. You could start with an investor as well. You could start by joining the investor tribe and talking to somebody in the tribe, and you can find a deal. There's meetups that we have, and you could find a deal at those meetups, right? Or you can go with a real estate agent. If you're working a full-time job, you don't have the time to do that. So you can always hire an agent, and Margaret will be an excellent choice for that search. And so you meet with her, then you and as the investor, you and Margaret will meet with either John or Eric and talk through the deal and help underwrite the deal with you. Mainly, why would you do that? Because I want to make sure that they can fund the deal. And so you notice that they talked about after repair value, they talked about purchase price. So it's super important to have those two figures in mind as you're navigating the flip. The first, how many of you guys heard that you buy when you what? You win when you buy. That's exactly it. You win when you purchase. You win at the purchase. I can't stress enough the importance of when you are going through that purchase process and you have a great agent that's an investor-friendly agent like Margaret, and you have another person that's just really helping you to underwrite that deal, they're going to help you. They're going to save you from yourself in a lot of ways. I have talks with John over the years that we've known each other, like, hey, do you like this deal? He's like, I like this. No, I don't like this. This is what I would. I'll let you. I'll do whatever you want. Like, that's his favorite. I'll do it. Look, I'll do whatever you want. But this is what I am thinking. And so you want good, honest people in your life like that. And so let's just fast forward a little bit. You got the agent. Margaret's helping you find the property. You connected with Eric and you connected with John. And so you're just like, okay, great. Now I'm ready to bring in some other people to help me. So enter Chad Winchell of Excel Inspections, and he's going to talk about some of the other things that we need to look out for as we're going through the purchasing process.
Yes. Well, whenever you're getting ready to buy a house, it depends on how much experience you have with construction and how closely you're able to look at the house. My service is to come in and look at every aspect of it, roof, foundation, plumbing, electrical, and I'm going to make a list of everything that needs to be repaired so that in the end, whenever you do want to sell it, everything that I put on there is something people are going to check. And I don't want you to be surprised at the end when you're trying to sell it. The home inspection brings back a list of 10 things that you got to fix that you weren't counting on. The value I bring also with this early inspection is you get to see how damaged or how much work is really going to be needed for the plumbing. Right, you might have really old galvanized steel pipes that need to be, the house needs to be repiped. You might have knob and tube wiring, 1940s house, old unsafe wiring and the house needs to be rewired. So these types of things are things to learn about before you're buying, and knowledge is power. So the more you know before you make that purchase, either you can negotiate, either you can walk away, or do whatever you find the best for you, knowing what work is going to need to be done.
And I know you've been on the podcast before, Chad. Lots of interesting stories. Do you have any? I know you've talked on the podcast about check the big system, make sure you check the roof, check the things that cost money, the heating and air. But do you have any interesting stories, or what's the oddest house you've ever inspected, or that I know you?
Well, I was doing one flip and did the whole house. It had a crawl space, so I always save the crawl space till the end because I want to get all dirty. And so I was going through the whole house, did everything, go down to the crawl space, take off the hatch. I look down. There's a basement down there, and with about 3 feet of water. Had unfinished drywall on the walls, of course, full of mold. I don't know what the flipper was thinking, and just, okay, let's just cover up the basement, let it fill full of water. And you got all kinds of mold issues now. So that was probably the craziest thing that I saw.
I just want to comment on Chad because I use his services, and the best way I found to use him is a before and after punch list. If I want to buy something, I send him in before. He goes and gives me a massive list. And honestly, I've made money off of him coming in because I can go to the seller and say, hey, I don't know if you know this, but this, and this are all broken. And because of this, your home is worth less. And I'm willing to fix it all. But because of that, I have a better negotiating position. And when the contractor says he's done, I don't have to listen or trust my contractor. I trust my Chad. I call him and send him back out there and I say, Chad, Did my contractor do the things he was supposed to do? Are all the nails in the right screw holes? Because I don't know anything about any of that stuff, right? But if I can get him there before and thereafter, I can document everything I've done in a very organized way. He has all the proper software to do it. I'm not walking around with a pen and a pad trying to figure out how to do this. And it gives me position in negotiation. Now, can you always get an inspector in there? No, sometimes you got to go fast. But when you can, he can make you money, literally make you money if you use him right.
Yeah, and on the back end, I can't tell you how many flips I've gotten on the roof, and there is a plumbing flashing totally missing. It's just a pipe coming out and a hole around the plumbing. Many times I've seen that on flips, and nobody's going to know unless I get up on the roof and look. And of course, the investor was paying top dollar to have a good job done. Same with insulation. Sometimes get up in the attic. They put new drywall, but there's no insulation at all. So those are types of things that you want to have checked out.
When dealing with flips, you hear a lot of times, bedrooms, big money, but there's a lot of focus on bathrooms, right? And kitchens. Guess what they both have in common? Plumbing. So it's important to get that stuff checked out, or have a trusted expert on your team that can give you estimates and tell you what they can do, or if you want to add a half bath, where should it go? So Steve does that with SOS Plumbing, and then we'll have to actually get back to Lane Group title too. But Steve, what can you go in plumbing 101 with flipping? What are your thoughts? What are things to be aware of? Things you would always replace, things that you may let go sometimes, but enlighten us about plumbing.
Yeah, so there's always a thin line of like, do we repair it or not when it comes to flips? Because plumbing is one of your most expensive line items. So a lot of investors, they don't want to repair it. But then whenever Chad comes in and nothing drains, then we're opening up walls. It's getting repaired anyways. So I always recommend really come in on the front end. It might boost your budget a little bit, but to replace, especially the old galvanized or cast iron that's coming through the walls, the drain arms, replace them. We don't have to replace the whole stack going up, but anything that water runs through, we should probably touch and really look at. Sometimes what we'll do like a pre-inspection where we'll run a camera through the system to make sure that your sewer system's right, so you're not doing $3,000 or $4,000 in landscaping, and now we got to go back and tear up your yard. So I think the main thing is like budget ahead of time and just know like plumbing's going to be your big issue. And if you're going to keep the house, especially, like, that's your number one maintenance issue. So don't nobody want no 3, 4 o'clock in the morning calls that the water heater's out, or, it's 20 years old, we should replace it, but it's still working, or there's some kind of flaw that could have been addressed initially. It's kind of like the main thing. I would definitely just recommend, like, doing it up front.
Definitely. And I know personally I have worked with Eric and haven't worked with SOS Plumbing, but I know I've definitely had that issue myself where I didn't do it on the front end. So I 100% recommend it, because I've had to actually do that, dig in the ground, get the sewer system together, and it's a hassle. So, but my first question, because I know I have my experience with my first flips, but I know it's a couple of you all here that actually have done flips. So I want to know, what is your personal experience with flipping? What was your first flip? Kind of 1 and 2 questions. What was your first flip, and what was the very first step you took to do that flip?
Yes. So I'm primarily like a buy and hold investor. I'm looking for like the long-term picture, buy a bunch of properties, run them out. The first flip, I would say, was it looked easier than what it turned out to be. Like the house is in decent shape. Wasn't no access to the crawl space, so I thought I'd get away with that. We ended up cutting up, open the floors to get fix the foundation. But it was definitely a learning curve, but also had a lot of experience prior to that, because where I buy and hold properties, I do like full gut renovations, make sure all my plumbing's up to par, first and foremost, and electrical, HVAC. But I would say, like, if you haven't done one, probably get with somebody that has. They can really like help guide you and like show you where the heck it may be. And then, yeah, just it's gonna be a learning curve. Just like bite the bullet and take the plunge. Just do
Makes
it.
sense. Makes sense.
I've got my actual first flip was my house. Was a house hack. I lived in it. I bought an old house in J-Town. I didn't have any money at the time, and I took my tax return plus about $1,500 of my own money, and actually a buddy of mine at the time, and we bought a house together that was one of those old quad levels. Some woman had got it in a divorce and hadn't taken care of it for years. It was massively overrun and overgrown, but it had decent bones. Not being able to afford anything but needing a place to live was kind of a unique scenario. So I split the house up and put one of my buddies in the basement, one on the middle floor and two on the top floor with me, and rented out each of the rooms. I was making about $1,700 a month. So what I did was I made the mortgage payment to repairs, and that made them make the house payments, like for LG&E, cable, water, all of it. And each month I would start kind of chopping away at either getting the yard done or what have you. And I would purposely find people that were in my age group that had skill sets. Like I had a guy that could do floors. I gave him a room for 4 months. He did my floors. That was a 6-year learning process. And in that time, I was able to turn the house in J-Town over from something that was pretty old and dilapidated to something that had been destroyed by a frat party, because we were all a bunch of high school and college-age kids. So I learned a lot. But going through it, I got to experience every level of the house, kind of one stage at a time. I got to tear out the floors with the guy that I had moved the floors in. I got to change it from the wall paneling to drywall when I had a guy that knew how to do drywall move in. And as each one of those happened, I tried to intake as much as I could from them on just the rough idea of what they're doing. I'm not going to learn their craft. I don't want to, but I at least need to know how to talk to somebody in the future if I plan to do this. And so being near them while they were working and living in the house provided me insanely valuable experience that just honestly is hard to recreate. My first real flip, the one that, I didn't live in, I guess you'd say, all I'll say is whatever you think you're going to spend rehabbing it, add 10% and then add 5 more. And if you're lucky, you'll only be about 5% off.
So what's really interesting? So my first flip was if I share my first flip, that's too embarrassing. Let me share my second flip. So my second flip was a house in the south end of Louisville. And actually, I believe I grabbed you for this. So it may have not been my second, it might have been my third, but it's a blur. So I asked Hampton, I said, hey man, can you help me out with buying this house? And so he says, well, yeah, I'll help you. He hooked up with the creative financing, so it was absolutely amazing. I found the property, and I also had talent on hand to actually do some of the work. We interviewed different contractors. We had different people come by. We interviewed them, and then you had some people, and then so now I know the story. So he had some people come by, and they were working at a clip for about 2 weeks. We both get there like on a Thursday or Friday, because we were thinking about, because he was like, well, I gotta pay him. So he would come up on the Thursday or Friday, and we would meet at the property. We meet at the property, the stuff is gone. The equipment was gone. The material's gone. The toilet was gone. We bought a toilet and literally had it in there, and they ran off with everything. No, it was still in the box. It was still in the box. Gone. Everything was gone. So what was the lesson that we learned? No, we didn't learn the lesson. So what we did, we didn't learn the lesson, okay? So we went forward, okay? So we tried to find them, and I was hot. He's upset. We're like, you know what, man? We hate what we're, man. So the answer is not stop flipping houses. It was let's find some new people. So then we brought in somebody else. I think you remember when we brought in somebody for the flooring. Yes, it took forever to get the flooring done. So basically, if you don't do hardwood flooring right, then your floor is going to end up dark. You have to just stain it dark to cover up everything. And just as a key, this has nothing to do with anything, just useless knowledge. When you work with hardwood floors, do you know why the stains are so dark? The stains are dark in some hardwood flooring due to pet urine. Yeah, scratches and pet urine. That's why that's what causes a lot of stains in hardwood floors. So you have to sand them really fine. You have to sand them down, right? Or you have to go to a place to replace the wood. Well, we did both. We sanded them and then we also replaced the wood. But because we didn't hire a professional, we hired someone who said, hey, you can do this, I can do this. I know what I'm doing. All I gotta do is watch a YouTube video. Never hire someone who says, I gotta watch a YouTube video in order to figure it out, okay? So the person watched the YouTube video, messed up our hardwood floors.
5,800 square feet, it was a big house.
It was a big house. Literally, this was a big home. And that's another thing. Try not to take on large homes and you don't have the experience and what it takes, okay? So fun times. Fast forward, we finally bring in the professional. But this person worked a job and can only do it on the weekends. So would do all the work on the weekends and then we couldn't access parts of the house during the week. So it was really fun. And so I'm gonna go ahead and let Hampton wrap this thing up. And so, you know.
So we're not telling you that to scare you away. It was, learning experience. But when you're starting flipping houses, we wouldn't suggest going with a 5,000 plus older house on a hill or an old 1800s Victorian house. Look for a 2-3 bedroom ranch on a slab, maybe brick, something simple, so you don't get a big ugly one for your first one. You don't want to jump into a big ugly. That's okay.
Scare you guys off, but,
What does that mean? Emotional damage every time it comes up here. So it was a very unique house. We got it done. We made money. It was a learning experience. But don't take on a big ugly house for your first project. No matter how much you want to, no matter how much it's calling your name, stick with something simple, smaller, be a lot quicker on that. But when it does come time to buy the house, one of our sponsors, they're shy. They didn't want a speaker be on the panel. They just wanted to buy dinner for everybody. So Land Group Title actually sponsored the meals. And they do closings all over Kentucky and Indiana. They've got offices in New Albany and Louisville, Lexington, Richmond. They've got multiple offices around, so they're very, very affordable and they're investor friendly. So you can add them to your team or find, you want to make sure you've got a title company or two that can do your closings, because you do want to make sure you've got insurance and that they check the title. And they've done the background, the research that you don't have the time or expertise that most people don't have the time to do. So use a title company when you're buying property, and ask them for their opinions on things. So awesome.
All right. So how do you know if a house is worth looking at? That's for the panel. Oh, my bad. So sorry, Eric. Yeah, continue.
Skip
Your
me
flip.
over here, man. No, I'm okay.
You're so far away.
Yeah. So my first flip was not intended to be a flip. Actually had a group of us that went in together with the intention of buying and holding real estate, but some lessons that we learned involved, one, making sure that everybody was in alignment. We didn't really have alignment between the person who was going to head up the project and how they like to put together budgets and how they like to hire subs, etc., and manage the project versus the other folks who were, handling the more finance or business aspect of it. So that was an interesting learning lesson, number one. Also, putting together the budget on the front end and executing that budget became a real issue for us. And by the end, it was, for a number of factors, became a scenario where it's like, we're just going to sell this property because we're not going to, this doesn't have a long prospect of a partnership, right? One of the things I learned from that, and that I see in the business I'm in now, lending private money, is like these guys are talking about, looking at the property up front and making sure your budget is as dialed in as it can be, And overestimating is so important, because especially for you guys that are here tonight because you're trying to get into your first deal, you know, like a Tony over here, he can probably walk through a house and tell you pretty darn well what that project is going to cost and what it's going to need. You probably don't have that expertise right now. You'll get there, but that's where, you know, what these guys are talking about, you need to lean on them, because us as a lender, you know, we're going to analyze your budget, but really we just know the information that you're providing us on that house. We haven't been in that house, so we can analyze what you've sent, but you need to make sure that you're so dialed in, because one of the main issues we see look, we work with all types of investors. Super seasoned guys, been doing it for decades, people that are coming to us for their first deal. The people coming for their first deal, one of the main issues I see is exactly that. Have you properly budgeted for your project, and are you able to properly manage your crew that is doing that project and executing on it? That's one of the key areas that we see people have difficulty and have deals go sideways, because there's cost overruns, there's time delays, you name it. So yeah, my first flip was not intended to be a flip. Didn't go well, but was a great learning experience that helps me be a better lender for our clients today.
All right. So I think Milton asked the question. Oh, we'll stop for applause. Yeah, raise it. Thank you. Milton started to ask the question, how do you know if a house is worth looking at? And then there's a follow-up question, so what problems make you walk or run away from a house? So if you think about what's coming next, but what how do you know a house is worth looking at? Do you look where it is, price? What are your first criteria that you guys looking at?
I honestly just want to make 30%. Here's the thing. If I can make 30%, I can get a lender to finance it. I don't care beyond that. The tenants are going to pay for it. If I don't have to put any of my own money in it, and the bill is going to be paid by somebody else, and I'm the beneficiary of the asset at the end, there's not really a whole lot else I need to think about, right? And that's kind of why I live and ride the Burr method so hard, because it allows me to do exactly those things. So for me, the very first thing I do is I comp it, and then I take the price and I comp it out, figure out what it's worth. I multiply that number by 70%, and then I take the purchase price away from that. And if whatever number's left, if I feel like I can get close to rehabbing the house for it, we might be cooking with fire. If not, and I really want it, I'm gonna have to call out to the seller and see if I can negotiate a way to get it in. But basically, if I think I can get relatively close to 70% after the rehab and all that, I'm in.
So yeah, as far as me, I guess you really got to define your goals. Are you looking for cash flow now or appreciation later? So for me, starting out, I want a cash flow. Like, I want some money coming in. So what I end up doing is coming to these groups, networking with wholesalers, and finding properties in lower income areas. You're looking at $100,000, $200,000 properties that needed a lot of work. So I would get my hard money loans, 100% finance. We go in, my construction background, completely renovate the property, and you got a new home. So we just took this dilapidated property, elevated the price, and made our spread, refinanced it, put a tenant there, make some money. So yeah, that's like my thing, I guess. What was the question?
What makes you want to look at a house?
Oh, look at the house. Yeah. So I guess like the areas I know that have a higher cash flow per property compared to like purchase price and like ARV, to where I'm getting my cash flow coming in, not so much of a property that's gonna be in a more desirable area, but I'm maxed out as far as like more my rent is to my mortgage, my ratio, 1-to-1 ratio. So.
And when you're trying to estimate cash flow, where are you going for your like rent estimates?
Probably Zillow first. Like find that zip code, that area, bedroom count, bathroom count, square footage, and then kind of see what the market is sustaining and kind of based off that. And then I'll work backwards. Okay, if I can get $1,200 for a 2-bedroom in the South End at a mortgage of whatever, I know my payment's gonna be this, I make $400 or $500 a month.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm cool with it.
There's also another good tool that's available for free to Investor Tribe members. They offer a paid service, but we actually pay for it, so you guys get some free reports. But it's Rentometer. Some people know it as Rentometer. So we've talked with the CEO. He actually did a whole video recently about the Louisville market and how to find deals and how to estimate the rent numbers. But it's a nice free service that if you're part of the investor tribe, you can join for free and then have access to some of those reports. So it's a great way to estimate the rental income or to take an average of it in Zillow. But we're big fans of Rentometer, which I for years thought was Rentometer, but the CEO corrected us. So we were wrong, he was right. So.
When you're comping out rent, just be really careful about the actual bedroom count. I run into this problem so many times on my end, and I'm the last one to see it, right? He's already done the flip. You may already have a tenant in there, and you may have rented it out as a 4-bedroom, but when the final appraisal goes through, it's going to be a conforming appraisal. So if one of those 4 bedrooms is upstairs and it's got a pitched roof and doesn't have enough square footage, by definition, you can't call that a bedroom. And then if one of the other bedrooms doesn't have a wide enough window because you didn't have an egress or whatever it was, you truly have a 2-1 with 2 non-conforming spaces. And I cannot tell you the amount of times I've talked an angry investor off the ledge screaming at me that it's 4 bedrooms, and I'm screaming back, I know I'm with you, and that's how they're going to use it. But that doesn't matter because that's not how it counts legally, right? So when you do those comps, do yourself a favor, make sure that all your bedrooms are conforming, because everything for comps is going to be based off of that, and you will find yourself be able to rent it for more because it has those non-conforming rooms, but it won't show up the way it should because it doesn't document per the appraisals.
Gotcha. Okay. The the non-conforming bedrooms, that is it is important. But have you ever had a house, or what makes you just want to run away from a house? What's too big and scary? You don't want to tackle it. You're afraid, or is it a combination of things? Chad's probably a good one for you to start off with. If you were going to buy a house, what things would just be a deal breaker for you?
Well, I think significant foundation problems, right? If there are large cracks in the foundation, that would be a big, a big project to take on. A lot of these, cheaper properties are on crawl spaces. So crawl spaces can have tons of termite damage. If you've got really wavy floors, they're really wavy for a reason. Likely, main beam could be really just eaten up by termites or water damage, floor joist. So you got to be especially wary whenever there's a lot of waviness in the floor. These electrical and plumbing things, they can get pricey. If you're having to do extensive work on electrical and plumbing. But I guess foundation was the biggest red flag, because unless you get a foundation guy there, you don't know what the ultimate solution would be.
And so I'm curious with you, Eric, how much money do I need to get started? Realistically, how much money? Now, I know that is a factor where it's very hard to navigate, but how much money will I really need to get started?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. Obviously, it can depend on the deal and the borrower and all of those things. But I mentioned the issue we see, especially with new investors, around budgeting and managing projects. I think the other that I would point out that we see issues with is making the mistake of not having some capital to get started in this game. Obviously, there are people like Kentucky Private Lending, other funding sources that you can use. You hear people say, use other people's money. If you do it right, as John's talking about, you can ultimately end up in a property with no money in it and a cash flowing asset. That's the goal. That's what we're all trying to do. However, it is wise to have some amount of capital before you get into this business, because of course there are going to be things like carrying costs that you may have to cover. There may be some upfront money that you need to get a project started, to get your crews going until you can take a draw. There's inevitably going to be some sort of cost overrun that maybe you need to fund out of pocket, to keep a project going. If you're truly trying to get into the game with zero money, unless maybe you're doing the creative finance type of method. You're just taking on even more risk than you already are. As far as the amount needed, that can kind of be deal specific. Like, with our financing, if you have a loan that is, all in purchase and rehab, certainly if you're 65%, maybe even 70% of ARV, that presents an opportunity to do 100% financing, like the example that we mentioned earlier. In those scenarios, you still will have some closing costs that you need to bring to the table for origination fees, title costs, things like that. That may be a $3,000-$4,000 amount that you're bringing to the table. Depending on the deal and the loan structure, the way your lender operates, you may have monthly interest payments that you need to make. Like with us, we typically collect monthly interest payments. Now there's ways around that. We may, if you have the room, we may be able to roll them into the loan amount so that it's not, cash flow coming out of your pocket each month. But things that you need to consider and understand with your lender and how your lender works. So as far as the underwriting goes, we don't really have an exact science where we say, you submit me a deal, I need you to have 20% of your total loan amount or else I'm not doing the deal. We're a little more subjective than that, but you want to make sure, like what we're looking at as a lender, when I collect your bank statements, I'm really just trying to verify what liquidity, what capital do you have access to, and how does that compare to what I'm going to ask you to bring to closing, if anything, what your monthly payment's going to be, and then having some cushion for whatever cost overruns there may be or things that you need to fund out of pocket. So sorry, I hope you weren't looking for like, you need $10,000 to get started, but it can be a little bit
No, and we are going to get to questions in about we're going to get to questions in a couple of minutes. And so what I did want to ask you guys was, and this is for the whole panel, what surprises you the most when it comes to repairs that are just last minute? What are people that overlook? What are things that people overlook and that surprise you the most?
I have a unique advantage here because I've got a 10,000 foot overview as the lender on the exit, right? And so I hear both the good and the bad and see all the success stories and get all the phone calls for people that are looking for a bailout that have messed up. And I'd love to give you one specific cost, but if I'm being honest, it's usually death by 1,000 cuts. This thing, when we're flipping houses, there's so many tiny little things. And what'll happen is people will account for 70% of them. They'll forget about 10% of them, and then the last 20% they'll rough in and they'll get wrong, right? And that's really what happens is people they don't take the time to get truly organized and write down an entire list of all their costs, a true scope of work, but for the cost of the whole project all the way to the end. And then take it to their next project and find out which ones they left off, right? And that list should grow each time you do one because you will find what cost you did not account for. Maybe this time you forgot to think about the fact that you got to pay $300 a month for electric while they're working on the house because they're constantly running power drills. You do that for 3 months, you just lost $1,000. Have some water in the house and that 1,000 just became 1,500. And we haven't talked once about utilities tonight, so I don't think anybody in here was probably thinking about things like utilities. But it's death by 1,000 cuts. So what you have to do is get organized and be prepared for all those cuts because they will come no matter who you are. They come for me, Eric, Chad. Everybody here in the room will experience those cuts while you go through it. So make sure that you're organized enough and budget them into your scenario. And no one thing will be so surprising it destroys your portfolio, right?
And we call that holding costs. So when you are buying a property and you're in the middle of the deal, like you're in the middle of renovation, we call those costs associated holding costs. What is the cost to hold that property while I'm renovating, while I am going through the entire process? So there are utilities, there's insurance that I had to secure, There's a different type of insurance that I secure if I'm doing the work myself, or if I have a cadre of handymen working on the property versus me having a qualified, great contractor involved. And a lot of people don't know that. Sometimes lenders require different insurances based on who's doing the work. If you don't have great, so if I got me and my cousin doing the work, we're gonna require a different, in some cases, they require a different form of insurance. Why? Because I'm unlicensed, but I'm handy around a house. Now, that's not what my wife says, but you know, but I can say, hey, I'm handy around the house, and me and my cousin are gonna take care of it to varying degrees. So it's very important for you to do a calculus of the holding costs. Now, how much should I set aside for those types of contingencies? Anybody?
More than you think.
Well, you know, so a good rule to think about is anywhere from 5 to 10% for contingencies. Because I definitely want you to leave with, and look, we have some real nightmare stories. I have nightmare stories. I've done flips where I've had really good talent, and I've paid everything, and at the end, I didn't make a dime. It looked great. I didn't calculate, and I'm an agent, okay? I'm a real estate agent for 8 years. I've sold over 200 homes, and I still can mess up. And so or the market can change, and my assumptions about the data and where the market was could be off. And that can cost you thousands. So it's so important to properly underwrite the deal, to find a great deal, and to really avoid some of these cost overruns. At this point, what we like to, go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought John's advice was, add 10% and then add 5% on top of that. I thought that was pretty good. You had asked about things we've been surprised by, and of course I go to inspect flips after they've been done, and sometimes I'm really surprised at the shortcuts that have been done, have been taken, or just the total neglect of really major issues. A couple of months ago over in New Albany, I went to do this home inspection. Upstairs, it looked beautiful, really beautiful finishes, a lot of tile everywhere, a lot of fancy light work and all of this. Then I went down in the crawl space, and like the main beam had major termite damage that had not been addressed. There was tons of mold in the crawl space, tons of termite damage just throughout that had been totally not addressed and neglected. And I mean, that's shocking that you would invest all your money up top whenever down, the foundation of the house is just not been addressed, not been repaired. So I do get really surprised sometimes by the shortcuts that are taken, and sometimes I'm really pleasantly surprised by the quality. I mean, I always love going to flips that have been done well, and I do see those quite often, and I'm always very happy to see those. Yeah.
All right. Well, so what we want to do is ask if anyone has questions for our panelists.
Please speak into the mic.
All right. I'm going to go to Mr. Tony first.
I got a question for each one of you all. One, it just says branch manager. It doesn't say what outfit you with. Southwest Funding. Southwest? Southwest Funding. Southwest Funding. Okay, great. And I need to know, what is your percentage to the ARV do you lend? 75% ARV?
Yep. Yeah, so 75% would be the max that we would ever go.
Okay.
Our average is actually more like 65%. But so anywhere in that range. And again, there can be some nuance because, if you've got a deal that's at that level, that's where you may want to increase it, not only for contingency, but to include some interest payments, things like that. But 75 would typically be the max loan to ARV percentage we would go to.
Okay, thanks. And for the plumber, do you price your full rehabs by the opening, or do you just go in and you know, give them a detailed scope of work of what you're gonna do?
Well, yeah, if the property needs a complete repipe, we rough it out like per opening, per fixture. That can range anywhere from $800 to $1,200 per opening.
Okay.
Usually to help the customer, they provide their own fixtures, the back end. So
What about the water heater?
they provide that also.
They provide the water
Because anything we provide, we have to mark up. You know,
Okay.
just 'cause the material efficiency aspect of the business. So, but yeah, usually we do a repipe. We just do by the opening.
Okay.
And then, you know, if we just
Between
like-
8 to 1,200.
Yeah.
And then what about the gas line?
It depends.
Okay.
If we're doing complete gas line, you know, from the meter, we got to route everything else, or we can just like repair some stuff. You know,
Yeah,
that's
like,
kinda
let's say from the meter, we are gonna eliminate all the other gas lines, like for the water heater and for the stove, and just have one for the furnace.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of variables in that.
Okay.
You know, the length of, you know, are you in a crawl space, are you in an unfinished basement,
Yeah.
are you know,
I
do you
got
need
you,
a 3/4,
I got
you know, so there's a lot of variables in that, but yeah,
Okay.
we'll price that out individually.
Okay, thanks.
All right, all right, let me hand, well, I'm over here, so let me go ahead.
Hi, thank you for all that insight. That was really helpful. So my question is, what strategies are you using to find off-market deals right now?
Primarily wholesalers, like getting them with these network groups. It takes a lot of legwork to find these off-market deals. It's kind of competitive, but at the same time, they're out there because there's always gonna be probate, there's always gonna be divorce, there's always gonna be something, you know, what do you call it, the 5 Ds?
The Ds, yeah,
Yeah,
death, disability, downsizing,
Yeah.
divorce,
So-
detention, defaulted, you know, deferred maintenance, yeah. there's
Yeah.
a lot.
So there's always gonna be properties out there. It's just like locating them. You can either source that yourself, whether you do like your own direct marketing, send flowers, drive for dollars, send postcards. There's a lot of different avenues for that for sure.
People are gonna hate this answer, but I love Facebook. Like, it's so corny, and it's such a, I hate being on social media, but I will tell you now, I can get anything off Facebook. All right, so if I spend a good hour a day actually hunting, you can go drive for dollars, drive around the neighborhood, and you can find some houses. I can touch hundreds of thousands of people on Facebook with the right comments in the right groups, and I do it on a regular basis. It's a good portion of my business and where it comes from. And I do the same thing when I'm looking for houses. You just have to know what to say to trigger the words, and I think we all know them. We've seen those social media posts at this point. They're corny and they kind of look, you know, contrived, but they work. And what you tell them is, hey, grandma can't take care of the house, the roof is caving in, and she's got dementia, and you found her in the middle of the road, you need to sell the house, I got cash, call me. Hey, you know, this house is in foreclosure and you need it gone, cool, I got cash, call me. Put those posts out in the Facebook groups. Make sure you actually have the money ready, because when those people come knocking, if you don't, they will figure out that you're a fraud and they will not come again. Almost everybody in this room has done business with everybody else in this room, whether on purpose or not. And what we find is working with the same people is we're looking for who's real and who's actually going to produce, right? So if you're going to get into these Facebook groups and these meetings and have the conversations, be prepared to execute, but you've got to sing your own song. Nobody's going to play you into this arena and, you know, hype you up. Go out there, tell people what you want, keep the posting going. It will feel dry, it will feel repetitive, but guess what? It's free and it works. It's just a lot of work.
All right, and who was it over here? Okay.
I just had a question about the numbers. Like, so I know you said 30%. So number one, is 30% typically what you guys are looking to make when you're flipping a house? And number two, what's the most profit in thousands that you've ever made flipping a house? And I would like to hear from Ali and Hampton as well, and Tony.
Yeah, for myself, as far as property I had, so I bought a fourplex, owner finance years ago, completely renovated, had to rent it out. It become a lot to manage, a lot of turnover. 5-6 years later, had a lot of equity into it, turned around and sold it, kind of like the height of the market a couple years ago, made about $108,000. 108. Yep.
If I had to, I don't sell mine, so I guess I'm just kind of going by equity. But if I had to guess, my J-Town house, the one I house hacked, is by far winning that battle. I think I'm up 250 grand on it at this point. That's a non-conventional situation. The closest I'd say to a traditional situation I've ever done, I made about 125 grand in equity on one property. So that, again, I don't sell them, but that's probably the closest way to compare it.
Yeah, as evidenced by my story earlier, my accidental flip isn't anything to write home about. And I spend all my time now lending money to others. So I want to hear you tell me how much money you make after we fund one for you.
All right, now I'm gonna step back over here because this is where our main camera. But so I did a flip and took 3 years to get into this house, and worked on it myself and with a couple people. And I had to split the profits, so I made, so we made combined about a little under 80,000. So I walked away with about $37,000. So it was with a partner, walked away with around 37,000. Did another flip, walked away with around 30. So my flips with partners kind of average around that. As far as because I do pay myself as a real estate agent. I do pay, I make sure the other real estate agent is paid. This is just how we work, and we get a lot of great people that's involved. Whenever I use cheap people, they end up being more expensive. Hands down. I use cheap people, they're more expensive. Steve worked on a couple of the flips that we've done, and he's been great. Came in, gutted everything, took care of everything. And that's how, now on one of the flips I can remember that he was actually on, I think we only did around 24. So it literally depends on different margins, different things that you discover through the process. And again, we always make sure that we are just in line with the market, and that's me.
Yeah, I had a few, six-figure flips. I had a good week where we wholesaled 2, and we made $75,000 each on a portfolio of properties. So we had two, a $75,000 closing, a $75,000 closing, and then I sold a house to another investor that I bought at auction, and we made $100,000. So this is all in 1 week. So we had like a $250,000 week, and then I financed that deal to him so he could finish up the work and get it sold, because it was a nightmare getting rid of the old owner out of there. So we made a good bit of interest, on that as well.
I didn't buy one of those houses, did I?
You didn't. You did not one of those. But one of the ones we made $75,000 on, I see it for sale, and it's now 3 times what we sold it for. So it was a multifamily that was pitched to a bunch of investors, and I was the only one that jumped on it, and it was an estate deal. So everybody had the same opportunity. I just took action and led to a real quick, payday. But maybe I should have held on to it, because now it would have been worth a couple $100,000 more. But I wasn't complaining at the time.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it's kind of funny that I actually met Milton on one of my biggest deals. Milton put on Facebook that he was looking for a house in Park Duval, and he needed 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. And I just happened to be living in 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. I bought the house for $92,000. I did all the work myself, new flooring, new paint, and all that. And it was a pretty nice house. And Milton said, I'll give you $190,000 for the house. And I was like, that's $100,000 profit. Yeah, yeah. I didn't have a place to live. But I said, yeah. And Milton, we worked out the deal. I bought another house in Park Duval. It had upstairs and a basement, so it was a little bit more square footage. But I hadn't even bought the house, and I needed to do the rehab. So he ended up giving me 90 days, and he told me, put your stuff in a trailer and get out. That's what he did. That's what he said. That's what he said. I'm not playing. I can call my wife now. He said, put your stuff in the trailer. I'm giving you an extra 15, because I only wanted to sell it for $175. He said, I'm giving you an extra $15,000. Put your stuff in the trailer and move out.
Oh yeah, now I remember.
Yeah. I wasn't lying. But anyway, I ended up getting $101,000 on that deal, but that was my house. And I was able to fully fund the rehab of the house that we're living in now. But that's not my best deal. I just wanted to bring it up with Milton. My best deal was I bought 3 houses for $55,000. This, I don't know, a lender had the deal. They didn't want to do anything in the West End. They were getting rid of it. I immediately wholesaled one of those deals to one of my contractors, and for $25,000. I fully funded one of the houses because I only wanted one, and I knew that it would be a nice flip. It was 823 Dearborn, and I funded the deal with the $55,000 and then grabbed the rehab money with a hard money lender. So I had a fully funded deal. So at the end of the day, with me wholesaling, I only needed to bring $10,000 to the table. So I ended up leaving closing with $15,000, a house free and clear, and a fully funded deal that I ended up making $75,000 on. So that was a home run that I've never repeated. You know.
This wraps up the first series of the Investor Tribe Fix and Flip series.
Our goal is to make real estate easier to understand and help you learn by actually doing it and asking experts.
And we want to thank everyone for being a part of the Investor Tribe podcast.
I'm Hampton Scurlock.
I'm Milton Ali.
I'm Koya, the owner, and we are the Investor Tribe podcast.
The Investor Tribe podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are not attorneys, financial advisors, or licensed tax professionals. The opinions expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and should not be taken as legal, financial, or investment advice. All investments carry risk, including loss of principal. Always do your own due diligence, consult qualified professionals, and make informed decisions based on your unique situation. The Investor Tribe podcast is brought to you by The Investor Tribe, all rights reserved, featuring Hampton Scurlock and Milton Aldi, executive producer Drew Cookenmaster, produced and distributed by Bespoke Marketing.